And so before we get started, I wanted to just like quickly ground us all in who we are as Bonterra, especially for those of you who may be newer customers, newer users. But Bonterra was formed in 2022. Too many twos for that to read well. By bringing together more than a dozen of the industry leading social goods software products. And we have found ourselves quickly the second largest but fastest growing social good focused software company in the world. We find we are uniquely positioned and incredibly optimistic about how we can help move the needle on social impact overall. We've got tens of thousands of customers across the multitude of products, with lots and lots of impact being generated. So thank you all for the work that you're doing and the impact that you've made. And we're really happy to be a part of the Bonterra family. But now I will kind of stop there and introduce you to our wonderful speakers today. We are super lucky to be joined by our great partners, Jeffrey Haywood and Jesse Christ. Super lucky to have you both here. Jeffrey will be running today's show. He's the owner of Sidekick Solutions, specializing in integration, development, and technical services for Bonterra's impact management tools. Sidekick Solutions is the developer of 15 integration connectors for impact management, including Zapier, REST API, Power BI, property management, and many, many others. So Jeffrey's a wealth of knowledge and super excited to hear what you have to say today. And they'll be joined by Jesse, who will be here a little bit more in the background to help with Q&A along the way. So if you see answers to your questions coming in from Jesse, that's who it is. Jesse's the lead consultant for Bonterra Impact Management, Zapier integration services at Sidekick Solutions, specializing in app-to-app automation. And she's developed over 30 API integrations with our impact management for apps, including Airtable, Google Sheets, MailChimp, QuickBooks Online, and many more. So Jesse, thank you for being here as well to help out with some questions along the way. But I will stop talking at you now and turn it over to the true stars of today's show. So I'll take it away. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it. Share my screen here. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. We're going to be talking about automation for Bonterra Impact Management, formerly known as Apricot. My name's Jeff Haywood. As Amanda said, I'm the owner and managing director of a company called Sidekick Solutions. We have a team of 20 consultants, and we focus exclusively on the Bonterra Impact Management solution. You're going to have to forgive me. I've been working with Apricot since 2013, and so the change in the brand name is going to be difficult for my brain to process. But I joke that I've been working with Apricot, the Bonterra Impact Management product, so long. You have to like it to work with it for that long. And so I'm a fan. And we've built a number of integrations and implementations against a product that we're excited to share with you today. As Amanda noted, Jessie Gilchrist is behind the scenes today. She's going to be doing some of the hand-to-hand combat with Q&A and chat, so that we can get through all the content that we have planned for you. It's a packed agenda. We're going to talk about automation using a platform called Zapier. The good news is that we're going to go through some demonstrations today. I have to do a little bit of baseline knowledge building in terms of the components that go into automation, but we're going to show you some stuff in the product today. And because we've got such a packed agenda, as I mentioned, Jesse's going to be behind the scenes answering questions and operating the chat as we go. At the end of the session, I do have opportunity to go through some Q&A live, and hopefully that'll help get all those questions that you have as we go along through the pipeline. So the first thing that I want to do, kind of the baseline for the webinars, do a little bit of framing. Why are we here? Why does this matter? I think it's critical to identify that our team, me included, believe that integration and automation are essential to user experience. And this promise that we've all been told that technology is going to help us do less paperwork can Case management software was built on the idea that it was going to help us reduce the amount of human effort in the delivery of services so that we can serve more people. And my belief is that automation is really the full vision of less paperwork, more service. And so my entire philosophy around Bonterra Impact Management, formerly the Apricot solution, is to develop products and services that help achieve that promise. So allow me to make the case for real-time automation. I think if you ask your users, I assume that many of you on this call are administrators of your product. Users can often give the feedback that Bonterra Impact Management feels a bit click heavy. Really, any CRM feels this way. We have to do the task in the software. So we've got to click around to do the work. We got to go from form to form, search, and ultimately that takes time. Clicks equal time in the software. And so the challenge that we have is how do we reduce that time? How do we automate work that's repetitive? And the solution to that is integration or automation with a focus and emphasis on conditional workflows, taking data entry tasks off of the human requirement, so making it that users don't have to do a task in the software, and ultimately expand the capabilities of the software without adding more users or without adding more bodies to the problem. So some examples of real-time automation are actions that happen in the software that ultimately react in the software. So today's webinar, we're going to focus primarily on Bonterra to Bonterra automation. So things you do in the impact management product that react in the impact management product, kind of a closed loop, if you will. So that might be something like updating the status of a participant when a record's completed, creating follow-ups automatically, possibly sending requests to a participant for additional information, like signing a consent form or filling out intake information. Or, as many users have often expressed, I just want to move data to different parts of my system without having a user key enter that data. So our firm thinks of Bonterra Impact Management as a constituent relationship management system, a case management system, short-term or shorthand, a CRM, effectively. And a CRM is an opportunity to build an electronic record around the participants that you serve. And an electronic record of a participant should contain lots of different things. Information about how you communicate with them, how you serve them, how they respond back to you. All that information needs to flow into your Bonterra Impact Management System as a hub. And so we think about the CRM, this tool that your end users are operating day to day, this business application, as a CRM. And as such, because it's that center point, we should be thinking about flowing data into Bonterra Impact Management as that centralized electronic record. So as you can see here, when we think about automation, we think about integration with other tools. We think about that Bonterra Impact solution being a hub in a wheel, and the spokes being the different connectors that you're going to plug into that wheel. Now, ultimately, when we think about integration automation, it can be a bit overwhelming. There's a lot of applications out there. There's a lot of use cases we're going to cover today. Even if we're just thinking about Bonterra to Bonterra automation, where do we start? Should we just pick things that everyone else is doing? Best practices? Should we be thinking about things that are unique to us? We like to simplify this down into a sequence of steps. So as you consider automation, you don't need to dive into the deep end of the pool. What we like to think about is identify pain point. If we start with the pain or the challenge, we can start this sequence to define what we're hoping to achieve with that pain point and ultimately adopt an application or a sequence to resolve that automation challenge. So again, high level, if this webinar or the concept of integration automation feels a bit dense, and honestly, it can be, we're going to talk about automation in an hour. And if you wanted to, I could probably take a day to do it. We can simplify it down to this flow right here. And when you think about automation, when you think about integration with your Bonterra Impact Management system, the last piece of the puzzle that you think about is native versus third party. Now, today we're going to focus on third party integration. So these are things that are occurring using tools that are external to the Bonterra Impact Management system, specifically the Zapier product. But there are two types of integrations, native and third party. Native is something like Bonterra's calendar integration. These are things where the integration is embedded within the native application. Zapier, in this case, is a third-party tool. We're connecting to an external vendor in order to facilitate these integrations. Our firm thinks about native versus third-party in a very specific way. If we can solve a use case with a native tool, we're going to default to that. Native tools are embedded within the product. They're generally included in your license. Use the native product if that's available to you. If the use case can't be solved with native integration, that's when we move over to third-party automation. And in this case, today we're going to focus on Zapier. Now, today's webinar is going to focus on Zapier and specifically the Bonterra Impact Management, formerly Apricot. We aren't going to cover anything on the ETO product today. So I know that there's been some questions in the chat and Q&A about ETO. We're going to focus exclusively on the Apricot product today. So Amanda, if you want to kick off our poll, we're curious to know how many of you have heard of Zapier before, and we'll see where we land.
All right, it's looking like at least half of folks responding so far have heard of it. Next number of folks say they've heard of it but never used it, and then about 10% right now looking like they've heard of it and used it. Haven't heard of it. Yeah.
Great. Well, I got 10% true believers. It's good to have you guys aboard. So we'll go ahead and continue on. So for those of you that are not aware of Zapier, the way I like to think about Zapier is we call it an integration platform as a service, or iPaaS. It's a middleware, a universal translator between applications. And in this case, it's a translator between Bonterra to Bonterra. Effectively, what you can think about with Zapier is they're throwing an integration party. Anybody in the party can play with anybody else at the party. And because our firm has integrated Bonterra Impact Management with Zapier, you can integrate Apricot, the Bonterra product, with 7,000 other applications in the Zapier marketplace. We're going to show you some components in Zapier today. The good news is that anyone can build automations in Zapier. It's a low, no-code solution, which means you don't have to be a developer. And the third benefit of the Zapier product is that you can customize your integrations. Here's how I like to think about this. Each of you, if you're an administrator for Apricot, probably enjoy the fact that you can customize the Bonterra Impact Management product. You can build forms, you can build reports, it's drag and drop. Everything's at your fingertips. You get to make it your own, your program, your service, your organization. That same customization that you get out of the Bonterra Impact Management product is the same customization that you can get out of Zapier. You can customize all of these flows to meet and suit your specific need. And that's advantageous because every organization has a little bit of a different workflow. Now, as we move into the practical part of today's presentation, and we focus on the use cases that we've selected to show you how powerful this tool can be. One of the things I like to ground in is this idea that automation is a continuous improvement process. If you set up a flow, let's say participants need to sign a consent after they complete an intake. We're going to show you that today. Once you set that flow in motion, you've taken one step up the ladder in capability. Then you can move on to the next automation and step up to the next level, and on and on and on. Automations like stacking, if you think about it in terms of leveling up the organization and leveling up your capability, once you set one of these automations into motion as a production state, kind of go live deployment, you can stack the next one on top without impacting potentially the prior one that you just built. So over time, things get more capable. I think this also gives organizations permission to start with pilots or start small, dip the toe into the water, if you will, with automation. It's not something where you have to kind of big bang a large scale project to get moving. You can start with that initial pain point and then grow from there. Now we're going to jump into some use cases here in just a minute. But before we do, I want to orient the group around the building blocks of automation within the Bonterra Impact Management software. The way that we think about automation in the Zapier product are like Legos. The building blocks of the tools help kind of build the workflow, if you will. And so we're going to go through those piece by piece so that you can see the capability that the Bonterra product has for automation itself. Now, the automations that we're going to focus on today are what we call event-based automation. Event-based automations start with a trigger. They continue on with a series of actions. You may have heard the term if this, then that, or when something happens in app A, continue by doing actions B and C. That's the type of flow sequence that we're going to be focused on today. So you can think of a trigger as the starting blocks, the starting event for a workflow. Once that workflow is kicked off, it's going to complete a series of tasks or actions, which might include filters or searches or writing records or updating records. And so we're going to go through the components that we've built for Bonterra Impact Management to show you how diverse these automation sequences can be. Now, to give you an example for these building block components, I'm going to show you a demonstration, a very high level scenario that'll demonstrate how a trigger and an action sequence works. So let's say that we have in our Apricot Bonterra Impact Management system a program enrollment. And when that program enrollment closes, we want to update the participant profile, flagging them as inactive and tagging the last active program on that profile. Now, some of my advanced administrators in the room might say, well, that's silly. Why would you do that? The data's on the enrollment. I hear you. But there are some benefits to having data pushed around the system. Searchability, quick view, the ability for users to see information summarized in one location. All these things can be helpful. And this sequence could be adapted to any type of push-based auto-populate. Also, for maybe the advanced in the room, you may be familiar with auto-populate fields. Auto-populate fields in the Bonterra Impact Management product pull data into forms. But with automation, we can push data out of forms. And so it's actually the opposite direction auto-populate. So enough talk, let's actually show you one. I'm going to jump over into the software here, and hopefully it hasn't logged me out. Oh, good. We're in a good spot. So I mentioned that quick view and search might be helpful if we can push data around even to the participant profile. You can see here I've got two fields, status and last program enrolled. And those two fields are fields that are driven by an automation, Bonterra to Bonterra automation, that come from the program enrollment, which is in the document folder of my participant. So I'm going to go into my participants document folder, and I've got an open enrollment here. And just so that we're clear, I should probably just proof point this real quick. There is no status and there is no last program enrolled on this participant profile. So if I go into my enrollment and exit, let's say I'll go ahead and exit this person from the process. APIs take just a hair, so we'll wait just a second for this to populate. And if we go back to the document folder, we can see this test person has an inactive status and a last program enrolled. That automation is based on a Zapier flow. I'm going to show you that flow here in just a minute. And what's happening is that we're pushing data onto the participant profile, which now gives us the ability to use those data elements in search. So the way that this looks in a Zapier flow, 3 steps. We have an updated program enrollment form. You can see I'm waiting for my enrollment and exit form to trigger. I only continue if the exit date is filled in, and then I update the participant profile with those 2 fields. And just so that we can see what this looks like in practical purposes, so you all believe me that this is low, no code. All I'm doing in terms of editing the participant profile is just mapping fields into a user interface. You can think of this a lot like a word merge document or anything else, maybe like an email marketing system, where I'm just putting tags, fields into the participant profile fields as part of this update record action. So now that you've gotten a flavor of what an automation might look like in these trigger action scenarios, let's go through the building blocks piece by piece. So we start with triggers, and triggers are likely not all that surprising to the group here. Everything in Apricot is based on forms and records. Tier 2s, Tier 1s, regardless of the forms that you've built, everything's based on record creation or record updates. So the triggers are not all that maybe exciting. They're pretty common. If you create a new record, we can trigger off of a new record creation. We can do that based on Tier 1 or Tier 2 forms. And all of the data elements that are on a Tier 1 or Tier 2 form are returned in the payload of that integration so that you can do things like filtering or mapping. In fact, this tool is so dynamic that as you add new fields to a form, those fields are presented within the Zapier builder so that you can use them in your automations. So a new record is when a record's created. That's that first save event. So the first time you fill out a form, click save, that is a trigger event for new record. And the second is updated record. That's going to trigger when a record is updated. So that's a subsequent save. Same drill. All fields are mapped in. And it's not going to trigger when a record's created, only on that second or subsequent save. So you can think of that as the last modified, effectively. So triggers are going to kick off flows. And when we're thinking about Bonterra to Bonterra automation. What that's allowing us to do is listen for created records or updated records in the system for a particular form. Now into the exciting part, action steps. So this is things that are flowing into the Apricot product or actioning into that Bonterra Impact Tier 1 or Tier 2 form. The first is we have the ability to find a record. Now, the number one question we always get about automation, is this going to create duplicate participants? Find record solves that exact challenge. So the reason that we use find record is so that we can do sequences like search for an existing participant. If it's found, give it back to me so I can post a tier 2, or create a new one if it doesn't exist. Now, what's exciting about the find record action is that we can search on both searchable and duplicate check fields. It's not exclusive to the duplicate check fields. And that's exciting because it means that you don't have to search just by name and date of birth, which is the common duplicate check in Bonterra products. You could do something like email. So if someone's filling out a form online for you and they give you your email, you can give you an email, you can duplicate check on an email address as opposed to name and date of birth. We can create records. We're going to do a number of demos today with creating records. An exciting part about create records is that we can create links between records as well. You can envision an intake form, maybe you're building a jot form or something, and you want to link participants to their case. The great news is that when you create records in Bonterra Impact Management, the Zapier connector can support linking between those records. We can update a record. So this would be something like we just did with the participant, where we have an existing record and we updated it with new information. One key thing about updating record, you're overriding existing data. So you've got to pinpoint that record ID and make sure that you're sure that you want to overwrite the data when you make that step. We can add an attachment. I think this is maybe an underrated but highly valuable tool in Bonterra Impact Management's automation portfolio. The reason that add attachment is so helpful is that oftentimes when we're thinking about automation, we're dealing with files and we need to move them either around in Bonterra Impact Management, the Apricot product, or we need to accept files from external locations. We can attach documents to any attachment field on any form in the product. You want to put an attachment field on the participant profile, we can post there. Any tier 2, we can post there as well. And then the last building block before we get into our use case demos here is to create a connect form. I'm going to pause on this one. I think it's going to be best to show you, and we're going to demonstrate that today. If you've ever used the Connect portal, one of the things you'll note is that in order to send a form to a Connect participant for them to fill out, you have to send a direct message. The user has to prompt that direct message. What we have done in the Zapier application is we've created the ability to automate the Connect forms so that you can send them on triggers or other events that may not be a user clicking a button to send a message. Today, we're going to show you creating an intake that automatically sends a user, a participant, a consent form. This is something brand new. We just have released it this year. What's exciting about this is that you can send these tier 2 forms to participants, and the participants do not need a Connect login. So you can imagine this is the best way to affect signatures. if what you can do is you can send these forms to participants. They don't need a login. They open the link from an SMS text or email, and they can sign the form right there. What's even more exciting is that when the form is filled out, it posts back to the participant's document folder. So everything stays connected within that electronic record. Like I said, Bonterra Impact Management's that hub. We want all that data to flow into the electronic record for a participant. All right, I breezed through the components so that we get to this part, which is the use case deep dive. We're going to go through 4 use cases today, and we're going to show you how these work and how they might be relevant to your own workflow. The first use case we're going to go through is that we're going to log a case note, a service activity after we fill out an assessment. I'm going to show you why that's important to prevent double data entry. I'm going to show you an alert follow-up escalation to a supervisor. We're going to go through that consent workflow that we talked about, where a participant is created in the system and automatically sent a form for them to sign for consent. And then I'm going to show you a Bonterra Impact Management sequence where you can use intake web forms to automatically post the web form submission into the document folder of an existing participant. I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's important and how that might save you some dollars as you think about other web form solutions. You can actually use Bonterra's web form solution to post information into a participant's document folder. So we're going to do a quick poll. We've got a sequence of use cases we're going to go through today, and we're interested in which use cases of the ones we've presented. Obviously, we're biased. We're presenting ones that are usable to us in this presentation. Which ones do you find most interesting? And we'll just take a quick pulse check on where people's desires are at and preferences are at for automation. And how are we looking?
All right, it's looking like most folks are falling into 3 buckets for the most part. The highest being follow-up alert and task creation, followed by push-based auto-populate, and then post-web form submission to document folder. And those are the 3 big buckets right now.
Great. Well, let's dive in. So the first one that we're going to go through is we're going to create an Arizona self-sufficiency matrix assessment. We've watered it down a little bit to get through a short list of questions and a tier 2. But we're going to create an assessment, and we're going to automatically create a service activity in the document folder that assessment was completed. Now, why this might be helpful in terms of use cases that sometimes organizations count the completion of other forms as services. So what you're able to do is cut data entry in half. You don't have to log the data in 2 places. You can maintain continuity in your reporting, and it also allows you to expand tier 2 forms in a document folder without sacrificing the need to see a single history of service events. Let's jump in here. Go back to my test person. All right, so I've got my Arizona self-sufficiency matrix here, and you can see I've got my service activity listed down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an Arizona self-sufficiency matrix. I'm going to say it's today. This is our baseline. And I'm going to say that this person's in a pretty good spot. So I'm going to fill that out and we're going to save that record. We're going to wait a second for our automation to run here. And when we go back to the document folder, we can see that our Arizona self-sufficiency matrix is completed and automatically posted a service activity to the document folder. Very simple form. Again, just to get the point across for the automation and identifying that that record was created automatically after that survey or assessment was completed. Now, same drill as we talked about earlier, the Zapier flow, pretty simple. Trigger new record. When that record is triggered, go ahead and create another record using that same participant ID to post in that person's document folder. And that's what ultimately gives us the ability to start frame out more documentation and create a continuity of service activity when I'm filling out various assessments, maybe other types of forms. And this prevents the need for building out the service activity as this monster form with a bunch of form logic, which would not be advisable. So kind of a low bar automation sequence, but again, cutting that data entry in half, giving you a single continuity of records, documenting every service, every touch point that you've had into a single service activity stack. Our next use case is an alert, follow-up, or escalation. This one's near and dear to my heart and how I think about providing quality service in the settings that we do this, housing, youth, income, employment. One of the things that if we think about the idea that technology is supposed to help us not only spend less time on paperwork, but also inform how to provide better service or action or insight into how we can deliver quality service to our participants. One of the things that's intriguing to me is the idea that if there is an event, an indicator in your case management system, that there might be risk. Why not create a record, a ticket, a case, something that indicates to a supervisor or maybe a specific specialist on your team that they need to engage with that individual to support that risk. And by supporting that risk record, we can move toward resolution, whatever that is. Maybe it's an updated treatment plan, new goals posted to a service plan. Maybe it's a follow-up assessment in 90 days when normally it's 6 months. You can see how this starts to help us pinpoint challenge and help to move it into a different place. So in this case, what we've designed for a workflow is that we're going to complete that same Arizona self-sufficiency matrix that we talked about. But what we're going to do is we're going to score that assessment in a risk zone. So in an area where there's high risk, and we're going to create a record, a ticket, a case in that participant's file that's going to post to a supervisor's dashboard where they can take action. And again, the idea here is to illuminate risk so that we can take action and provide good service. Now, you may be thinking, well, we already have this. It's called email triggers. I'm with you 100%. I think one of the challenges with email triggers is that it's not a great way to close the loop on risk because emails can get lost. It's outside of the product. It's not happening in Bonterra Impact product, your case management system. There's no documentation of the change. So email triggers, while good to alert external, don't solve the problem internal to the electronic record. All right, so let's jump in here. What we're going to do is we're going to create a self-sufficiency matrix here, and that's going to create a supervisor alert, and that's going to post to a dashboard. Now, I'm just going to quickly highlight the dashboard here. You can see we have no records posted here. They're going to show up in this dashboard as soon as I create this. So we'll say 22nd, that's the follow-up, and we'll just put high risk for each of these. Now, what we have is we have an automation sequence that's looking for total scores less than 6. Save that record. And we'll give our automation here a second to run. Now we can see there's a supervisor alert in the document folder. Looks like my dashboard's broken. That's demos for you folks. But you can see we've got an alert here. And this alert is a record that creates an opportunity for us to close or take notes with the ability to link off to the self-sufficiency matrix that produced this score. Now, again, what I like about this solution is that it creates a space for us to take action. You could envision adding notes fields, attachment fields, maybe collaboration, a signature by the supervisor identifying that it's been addressed. But this helps flag and promote service quality across the organization and closes the loop on challenges that are indicated by the completion of other forms. What I like also about this use case is that we are posting the record URL for the form that produced this escalation, this alert, so that the user can navigate between the two seamlessly. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, these document folders get fairly intense. There's a lot of documentation flowing in and out of these systems. And so having a link to that specific record can be quite helpful. Apricot needed a minute to refresh my dashboard. There you go. Dashboard showing that item, and then we can close it and it'll fall off that dashboard. Here. The next use case uses the Connect form that we talked about earlier, this new feature that we've produced for the Zapier product. And I think what's exciting about this is in this exact use case. It's something that comes up frequently when we implement Bonterra Impact Management, which is that when we complete an intake for a new participant, we need to gather a number of documents from the participant. We need release forms, we need consent forms, we need additional intake documents that are signed, and all of that material, most of the time, is done by the case manager. It's either gathered on paper, scanned into the case management platform, or there's various ways to get this data in. But the idea that we have tried to put together here is that why don't we just send them an email or send a text and have them open a form that they can complete that posts to their document folder. So what this sequence does is that when a new tier 1 profile is created, we search to see if there's a consent on file. If it's found, we don't do anything. If it's not found, then we send them a consent form to sign. Now, because I'm on a webinar here, I'm going to do this via email first, because I can't get my phone up to show you a text message. But we're going to show you this consent link and how that document posts back to the document folder. So what we can do here is we'll do and we'll give that a second to flow through our automation here. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Connect Forms, the way that Connect Forms work is that we produce a unique link. I'm going to show you that in a second, that points at one of these tier 2 forms in the document folder. And so when the user completes the form online, that document flows into their folder automatically. All right, so here is my email with a link. We can make these emails look much more dynamic and exciting. You'll notice that this form has an ID in it, and this is pointing directly at my participants document folder. Go ahead and sign this. What's also exciting is that from an electronic signature standpoint, this is pegged directly to an email address, so it operates a little bit like a DocuSign or a Hello sign. And it says all done. Now, what's also exciting about these forms is you can't click the link again. Once it's done, it's over. That process has ran its course. And so now you can see we have a signed consent form sitting in the document folder, and that form, that link that was generated to that individual, operated from their tier 1 intake form. Now, this could be done for all sorts of things. You could do signatures, you could do secondary application, any type of push-based or outbound form for your users to fill out will work. All right, so I know I'm at the 10-minute mark. I got one more scenario to show you here. All right, web form submissions. So one of the things that web forms have a difficult time with is duplicate checking. You want to send a participant a form, but you don't want it to live in the tier 1 stack. You want it to be in their document folder. Intake web forms are a great feature in Bonterra Impact Management, so let's use them. In this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill out a satisfaction survey, a tier 1 satisfaction survey in an intake web form. I'm going to duplicate check that intake web form, and I'm going to post it to my participants document folder. So I have a survey here. I'm going to use an intake web form. This form here posts to this survey tier 1. But what our automation is going to do is it's going to search whether I've got an existing participant. And obviously, because I'm running the demo, it's going to post to this satisfaction survey area here. So it's going to basically move from here to here on a duplicate check for name and email. Gotta make sure I get my email addresses right. Okay. All right, so now we got to give our automation 1 second to run here. All right, so we can see that there are 2 records now here. One of these is a survey that's being duplicate checked. And we posted that satisfaction into that individual's document folder from that tier 1 location. Satisfied, we pick that date there, and that record runs through. So what you're able to do is take intake web forms, build as many as you want. Whether you're using Connect or anything else, you can just use web forms to duplicate check into a participant's document folder using this Bonterra to Bonterra automation through Zapier. So if you're interested in getting started with this, our team builds these integrations for customers. We also offer a subscription to the Zapier connector for Bonterra Impact Management. You can learn a little bit more about our company, Sidekick Solutions, on our website. You're also welcome to contact us. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in reviewing some of our 5-star reviews on Zapier. Let me show you this page here. You can check out what some of our customers have said about us in building even Bonterra to Bonterra automations. There's some reviews in here related to that. I think high level, we'd also like to ask if you're interested in receiving any outreach from us, and we can follow up with you after this webinar. And then we can dive into some Q&A. I got in just under the wire, which is good.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
So
I'll leave that poll up for a moment here, but if you want to go ahead and take a question while it's running, you can leave that up for folks while we get to questions.
Sure. All right. So good questions. Let me dive into these. The first one I've got on the list here. Oh, go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to say, I've got a couple queued up. One of the questions that's come up a few times is this functionality restricted to 360, or can core and essential customers use this as well?
So I'll let Bonterra answer the question on licensing. Core users can operate this. There is an upgrade for the API that's required, but this is not restricted to 360.
Okay.
Jesse, do you want me to hit the list that's in the Q&A panel here that haven't been answered?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of good ones there right at the top. I'm working on one of them now, but if you want to start from the top, that would be great.
Great. So one of the questions here that we've got is what's been integrated with Bonterra Impact Management. I'll put this slide up here. A variety of tools have been integrated. Bonterra Impact Management is highly integration ready. Very little has not been done with it, and so we'll leave that there for people to digest, and that'll help answer that question there. There's a question about, is Zapier HIPAA compliant? Zapier will produce a security review. You can view their SOC report. As if you are a covered entity, our understanding is that Zapier will not sign a BAA. If you are interested in HIPAA compliance for integrations, we offer an alternative connector that is HIPAA compliant. And so that's something that we can discuss with you offline. High level, because HIPAA compliance requires a business associates agreement, Zapier would be a no on that. But to the extent that you have data that you can pass via integration, you can configure Zapier to get around the data that you might be restricted to process as a covered entity. One of the advantages of customization is that you get to choose what goes through the pipe. So if you don't want to send an integration platform specific data elements, you're in control of that.
Yeah, I think
question our enrollment. Jess,
okay.
I'll just go top to bottom here. So are enrollments and appointments under Apricot Tier 1s accessible via Zapier? They are not. Those two features don't have APIs that we can work with. Primarily, we're dealing with records-based universes, so Tier 1 and Tier 2 forms. Other question, do the Zapier connectors require us to pay for API access with Bonterra? If you're on Apricot 360, no. The API can be used for the Zapier connector as part of the 360 license. All right, Jess, which ones am I missing?
Yeah, I think we've got a couple questions recently about multi-language forms and any automated solutions for that.
Love this question. So the way that if you want to go full tilt and you want to go all in on multi-language forms externally, you have two options. You can pick a product like SurveyMonkey or JotForm or something that enables translation through the same data set, and you can post that data using Zapier into your Apricot product into a single form so that you get one table reporting. Or you can create, just like I showed you earlier with the solution for web forms, you can create a web form for each language and use Zapier to post all of the results to the same table. What that looks like is you have effectively a reporting table. So you're consuming all the data through different forms and posting to a single table that you're using for reporting. And this is actually a solution that we've implemented for a customer that had more than 2 language choices that they wanted to operate. And that allows all that data to flow into one reporting table so that you can report in English effectively using Apricot's native report builder.
You've got
So a
two
question
good
at the
questions
top
in
of the
Q&A.
list, which is, do you have to work with our team to integrate on Zapier? You do not. You do, the Zapier connector is sold through our team, but we offer the connector as a standalone. So if you want to DIY your own automations, you can do that to your heart's content. Another question here, which is on Power BI, completely different product. If you're interested in Power BI integration, that's something you're going to want to talk to our team about, specifically our data warehouse product for Bonterra Impact Management. Little different use case. We can't use event-based automation for Power BI.
Awesome. Well, it looks like you took us right to the hour on the dot, Jeff. So that was pretty well done. Pretty amazing on timing. I really appreciate you being here and sharing this awesome partnership and work that we do together. Folks, definitely encourage you to reach out to their team. There's so much greatness that comes with the work that we can do together. So thank you so much, Jeff and Jesse, for being here and answering all of these questions that came along the way. And again, if you have follow-up questions, reach out to either one of our teams. We'd be happy to chat with you offline, but really appreciate you both being here with us today. Hope everyone had a nice session.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.